everyone, welcome. We're going to take a couple minutes for folks to join. As you enter, please feel free to share your name, your organization, and your role of where you're joining us from. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to give it about one more minute before we start. All right, so welcome to our webinar. My name is Christina Veal, Product Strategist of Aperture Student Portal and your facilitator for today's session. Thank you for taking the time to join us as we learn together. Before we begin, let's go over some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and everyone will receive a copy at the end of the presentation to review or share with your colleagues. We will also provide all the resources from today's webinar in our post-event email. If you're having trouble seeing the screen, you should first exit the full screen view. If you still can't see the slides, then you can double click on the small box at the top middle of your screen, and it should bring up the slide deck. For this presentation, we recommend that you select speaker view at the right top hand corner of your screen. We also have closed captioning available. To access, click the button to the left of the reactions button there at the bottom of your screen, and you can toggle it on or off. You should also see 4 functions at the bottom of the screen. We will utilize the chat box throughout today's session. So the chat box can be used to provide answers to any questions and engage with each other. We are using the Q&A feature for all questions, so please add any questions to the Q&A box, not in the chat. And we will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. And then lastly is the raised hand function. So this feature can be used if there are any tech issues. If you raise your hand, we will send you a private chat to address any issues. And with that, I would like to introduce leading our webinar today is Jennifer Robitaille. Jennifer is the Director of Research and Development for Aperture Education. She is a co-author of the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment High School Edition, the DESA HSE Mini, and the DESA Middle and High School Student Self-Reports, as well as the Educator's Social Emotional Reflection and Training Program known as EdCert, which is an SEL professional development program for educators. Jennifer has provided consultation, professional development, and evaluation support to schools and out-of-school time programs using DESA data to inform and evaluate SEL programming. Jennifer has authored numerous peer-reviewed publications and book chapters focused on the measurement and promotion of social and emotional competence and resilience in children, the promotion of educator well-being, and SEL program implementation. And with that, I will pass it off to you, Jennifer.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jennifer Robitaille, the Director of Research and Development for Aperture Education, and I'm excited to spend the next 50 minutes or so with you all talking about the importance of incorporating opportunities for students to have voice and choice in developing their social and emotional skills. We'll also talk about how we at Aperture Education provide a way to do this. So we have three main goals for our time together today. The first is to understand what student voice is and why it is important. We'll spend some time where I will define what folks are typically referring to when talking about student voice. And I'll share some of the research behind the benefits of incorporating student voice into school settings. Second, we'll talk about recommendations for encouraging student voice in your school. And again, I'll share some of the things that the research tells us about how to make student voice opportunities most impactful, both for students and for the adults in your schools. And then lastly, I will walk through one approach to incorporating student voice and choice into social and emotional learning programming. So I will introduce you to the DESA student self-report for middle school and high school students, as well as the student portal, which is a student-facing online platform that students engage in. And I'll talk about how these tools create opportunities to actively involve students in developing their own social and emotional skills. So we have a lot to cover in a short time, so I'm going to jump right in. I'll also say we'll reserve some time at the end for any questions that you might have. So to get started, over the last decade or so, there has been increasing emphasis being placed on incorporating students' perspectives and their experiences within schools and within educational programming. We're seeing that broadly in terms of any kind of school improvement efforts, but we're also seeing that being incorporated into recommendations specifically for developing student social and emotional competence. And what you see here on the screen, I pulled a snapshot from a resource that CASEL has put together where they have highlighted youth voice as one of 10 key indicators of high quality and effective social and emotional learning programming for students. So experts in the field are increasingly emphasizing the importance of capturing youth voice and actively involving students in effective, high quality social and emotional learning programming. So let's take a few minutes and just talk about what we mean by student voice. And I have pulled two definitions here from the field that I'll share with you. So the first by Mitra and Gross is defines student voice as the many ways in which youth have opportunities to share in school decisions that will shape their lives and the lives of their peers. The second definition here, provided by Benner and al., says that student voice is student input into their education, ranging from input into the instructional topics, the way students learn, the way schools are designed, and more. And these two definitions are similar in that they both imply that students and student voice is all about students having many different opportunities to provide input into lots of different areas and different decisions that are happening within school settings. And one of the things that we know about student voice is that student voice is generally thought of as a spectrum or a continuum of various activities. So I pulled this graphic from a really great report all about student voice by Benner and al. From 2009 that really highlights this sort of continuum or spectrum of activities. The way this works, I know it's kind of a lot on the screen here, but essentially it's really thinking about and conceptualizing student voice as this range of opportunities for students. All the way on the left here are opportunities for the students to be heard, and then it progresses through to really providing students with actual leadership opportunities and opportunities to really be part of decision making. As we progress across this spectrum, you'll see that the level of student involvement and the level of collaboration that students have with adults increases. So if we start all the way on the left under expression, we see opportunities here such as students having a chance to volunteer their opinions and the adults acknowledging those opinions and contributions. Moving to the right, you see consultation. So opportunities for students to share feedback and opinions, maybe in focus groups or surveys. Again, moving to the right, participation. Now, in this case, students are beginning to be actual participants in meetings with decision makers and various stakeholders. Then it moves to partnership, where students become partners and have an explicit role in decision making. Again, then moving to the right, activism. This is where we really get proactive and students are identifying problems and solutions and advocating for change. And then lastly, all the way over to the right, students become leaders, where they're co-planning and sharing in decision-making and taking on more and more responsibility for being part of a team that makes decisions and contributes to decision-making in the school. So all of these various forms of student voice are important and provide really great opportunities for students to be proactively engaged in various improvement efforts in the school or programming efforts in a school. What you'll see is that these sorts of various student voice activities will differ depending on the actual goals. So for example, under consultation, providing an opportunity for every student to have a voice in like a school-wide survey on school safety or climate is a really great way to get a point in time snapshot of how students are feeling on an important topic. But there's other opportunities such as sort of on the more right side of this framework, where maybe a small group of students are participating on like a student government council or are participating as members on a school-based team, such as an SEL leadership team. So again, the purpose behind how to involve students will dictate sort of how students are involved, how many students are involved, and things like that. This will also obviously differ by the age or grade level of the students. It's going to look a little bit different for a third grader compared to a 12th grader. But I think this is a really useful framework for thinking about all the various ways we can actively engage students and give them a voice in sharing their perspectives and their experiences to help inform and guide their own educational experience. One thing, I guess regardless of the type of student voice activity that's being used in a school setting, research is really clear that it must be done in a very intentional and meaningful way to have the maximum value and impact for students and for schools. Research shows that student voice activities are most effective when they're carefully implemented and when the following things on the screen here are implemented. So the first is that the purpose and the goals need to be really clear for students. We need to explain why we're asking for their input, what input we're asking for, and how that information is going to be used, or else students may not be as willing to engage in this type of activity. The other thing that's important to make clear is the level of input students have in the areas of influence that's available to them. And then also what you're going to be doing with that information. Second, it needs to be really meaningful to students, and it also needs to be authentic in order to really get that level of engagement and get the good perspectives from students. One thing to keep in mind is that if we're asking for feedback from students, we need to do something with that feedback. Students will know really quickly if their feedback is ignored or dismissed. They could become, disillusioned and not willing to engage in future asks or requests for their perspectives. So we need to make sure it's authentic to students. It's important to make sure that diverse student perspectives are sought in any kind of student voice activity. Students will not necessarily agree on everything, and we want to make sure we hear all of the various voices for students. And this includes making sure we're capturing voices of students who historically don't have as much input or might have been historically marginalized populations, making sure we're getting perspectives from all students. In order for student voice to be most effective, there needs to also be an existing level of trust, a foundation where there is trust between students and the adults in the school. That trust has to promote an honesty and open dialogue between students and adults. We need to also think about scaffolding student voice activities for students, particularly as you get to that more advanced set of student voice activities on the right side of the continuum. Social and emotional skills are critical for many of these student voice activities. So being able to share your opinion in a respectful way, being able to lead discussions, being able to hear others, respect others, take the perspective of other people. All of these social and emotional skills are really, really critical for student voice activities. And so sometimes we have to build those skills in students and help students by scaffolding their learning so they're able to participate fully in these higher level activities. And then lastly, we also have to think about building the capacity for adults. Sometimes there's a shift in mindset when we really get into engaging students and hearing their voices and having them be part of decision making, that we need to think about making sure that adults have the skills or strategies they need to really facilitate those open and honest conversations. Again, the research shows, though, that when student voice initiatives are carefully considered, carefully implemented, and these things are thought of and followed, they can be very impactful for students. What the research shows is that incorporating student voice into education results in lots and lots of positive benefits for students. So when students are meaningfully involved, there are more opportunities for students to just practice their social and emotional skills, things like taking initiative, sharing your perspectives, leading discussions, contributing to effective decision-making, lots of great opportunities for students to practice and build their social and emotional skills. We also see that when students are brought in and brought into being a part of social and emotional learning efforts specifically, for example, when they are able to review social and emotional assessment data, when they can be part of conversations on interpreting their data, on using it to plan instruction, it leads them to be more empowered to build their own social and emotional skills and really engage and take on a more self-directed role in building and developing their own skill set. When students are heard, we also see that they develop more confidence in their knowledge and their expertise, which contributes to strengthening their sense of identity, which is such an important thing, particularly as students get into those adolescent years when they are building their identity and understanding their sense of identity. Research also shows that when students are meaningfully involved, there's increased ownership that students feel in their own learning. So when they have an opportunity to contribute to what they're learning, how they're learning it, they get to take much more ownership into it. And that helps to increase engagement. It also helps to increase feelings of belonging in their school when they have helped shape things that are happening, programming happening in their school. And then lastly, all of this results in increases in students' motivation, in their engagement, and their sense of agency, which are key to learning. There's also a number of benefits for the school itself. And so when students are involved in helping to have a voice in programming and creating, essentially creating a program or educational experiences, there's a number of benefits there too on the program side. So ultimately, it's going to result in a better fit to students' needs because we're hearing their voices and their perspectives and incorporating those into the programming we're providing. It also makes the program ultimately more relevant to students. If it's more relevant, they'll be more motivated and engaged and participating, and they'll be more fully informed. Again, the idea here that students are really helping to co-create their educational experiences. And lastly, it ultimately results in more effective programming for facilitating student learning. So that was a very quick overview of student voice and some of the research behind the why behind student voice, as well as some recommendations for how to engage in student voice activities within school settings. I now want to sort of shift and push the conversation more specifically into incorporating student voice in social and emotional learning programming. And I'm going to introduce you to a set of tools that our team at Aperture Education has created to help middle school and high schools bring youth in to developing their own social and emotional competence. So I will introduce you to the DESA student self-report as well as the student portal, and we'll use it as a way to dig a little bit deeper and illustrate how student voice can be continuously encouraged and be built in to social and emotional learning programming at the secondary level. So I'm going to start big picture in terms of talking about Aperture's approach to promoting student voice. For secondary students, we have developed what is called the student portal. The student portal is a student-facing platform. It's the platform that middle school and high school students will access and will use to work to develop their social and emotional skills. There are three main components to the student portal. I will talk in more depth about each of these, but at a high level, the student portal includes a student self-report assessment, referred to as the DESA for middle school and high school, the SSR I might use. The goal of the assessment is to provide a way for students to rate and assess their own social and emotional skills. So bringing their voice into where they see their current social and emotional skill set. The second part or second component of the student portal are a set of social and emotional learning strategies. We refer to them as challenges on the student portal for students to make them more interesting and engaging, but they're essentially strategies designed to build students' social and emotional skills. These are entirely self-directed strategies, and we provide ways for students to choose the strategies that they want to work through and present them in a way that's gamified to keep students interested and engaged. And then the third component of the student portal are a set of SMART goals, which provide opportunities to engage students beyond just social and emotional skills to make things relevant, engaging to them in other aspects of their lives. So we walk students through setting goals related to academics, to preparing for college, to extracurricular activities, really anything of interest to students. We provide some structure to support them setting goals that are personally relevant to them. Important thing I want to mention here in the vein of a student voice webinar is that all of these tools have been informed by students in their development. We have engaged with middle school and high school students throughout developing all of these tools over the years. And have a youth advisory board who we engage continuously to provide feedback to us to actually test out these things and get their perspective on what works, what doesn't, what they like, what they don't like. So all throughout mention sort of some areas where we've made adjustments or improvements based on feedback from students. So the first component I want to talk about is the DESA student self-report. This is a strength-based behavior rating scale of key social and emotional skills. So if you are already familiar with Aperture, you've probably heard of the DESA. The DESA, the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment, is a suite of assessment tools spanning K through 12 that have traditionally been completed by teachers and by parents to rate students' social and emotional skills. The DESA student self-report is now a student-completed version of the DESA that essentially expands our assessment suite so that we can collect information and collect information about students' social and emotional skills from the teacher's perspective, from parents' perspective, and from the student's own perspective, which is really important for having that good, rich understanding of a student's social and emotional skills from those various rater types. Provides really good, useful information for driving instruction at the school level. So all of the tools in the DESA suite, including the student self-report, are strength-based. So they measure positive social and emotional skills or behaviors that students are engaging in. These are all nationally standardized and norm reference tools. So essentially any score derived from these assessments will be able to tell how that student compares to students, in our case, nationally across the United States. And the self-report, as well as all the DESA assessments, are psychometrically sound. So they have been developed based on following the standards for reliability and validity for the intended uses of the tools. This is really important because this data, we want this data to be good data. So we need those tools to be psychometrically sound in order to have good data that we can make good decisions based on that data. The middle school self-report is 50 items. So students will complete 50 positive items. High school students complete 55 positive items. And it takes about 5 to 7 minutes for a given student to complete. Currently, both the middle school and high school are available in 11 different languages for students to complete. And we provide results directly to the student who completes the rating in terms of the student self-report, as well as to adults. So to their teacher, to school level and district level administrators. I'm not going to go too in depth about results in this webinar, but essentially we'll provide scores across, we provide a total social and emotional composite score, and then scores across specific social and emotional competency domains. So it'll tell you if the student has strengths in any of those areas. So that's like the highest scores. If they are in the typical range where most students will fall, or if students have a need for instruction in any social and emotional domain. And the whole goal of assessments is, as part of our model, is to be able to better understand a student's set of social and emotional skills in order to use that information to inform social and emotional instruction and make sure that students are able to build those skills where they're in need of additional support. The idea is that we want to make sure that every student has the social and emotional skills they need to be successful. And we believe assessments leading directly to instruction is the way to do that. These tools are also really useful for monitoring and evaluating change or growth in social and emotional skills over time. The DESA student self-report, as well as all of the DESA assessments, are aligned to the CASEL framework. So they're going to be reporting on skills like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. One thing that's a bit unique about the DESA tools is that we also report on optimistic thinking. CASEL talks about optimistic thinking within their self-awareness competency, but our tools have been really informed by resilience theory and positive youth development. And we feel that that sense of optimism, a sense of hope for the future, a positive view, a positive future view of themselves, and confidence in yourself is just so important that we want to make sure that we're measuring it and making sure we're providing instruction so that all students have that optimistic point of view. And so we have added optimistic thinking on these tools. On the student self-report and all the DESA assessments, you'll get scores across these various domains to understand specific areas where students are doing well, where they have strengths, and where there's opportunities to provide additional instruction and support for students. So back to the student portal. So the way students begin their experience. So again, I'm talking about middle school and high school students. The way they begin their experience with the student portal is by receiving an introduction on what it is they're doing. Drawing back on the research I shared about student voice, we need to be very clear in the purpose and our goals. And so prior to students completing the student self-report, we do encourage school staff to provide students with the why, like why they're being asked to do this, provide information on what social and emotional skills are and why they're important, as well as why they're going to be asked to complete this rating and what the data shows and how that data will be used. There are resources in our support portals in the Aperture system to provide slide decks and things for educators to introduce this to students. And then for the students themselves, we do provide when they log into the student portal for the first time, they'll see a little letter explaining what this is and a video that they can watch that goes into depth about the student portal. With that background, then we encourage students to begin their experience by completing the student self-report. As I mentioned, the student self-report is 50 items for middle school, 55 for high school. So here's a screenshot of the middle school version. The DESA, so this is a behavior rating scale. And so students will be rating on this scale from never to almost always. They will click through, each question is presented one at a time. And again, these are all positively worded items. So this example here, I can imagine a positive future for myself is one of those optimistic thinking items. Here's another example of an item. I cooperate with others to solve a problem. Students you can see at the bottom, students can go back and change their response if they want to before submitting the rating, but essentially they're directed through the assessment to complete it. Once they complete and submit their student self-report rating, they are immediately provided with their results. So first thing they'll see, this is basically the first thing that they'll see. It's a screenshot essentially from our system. Drawing on our strength-based approach to promoting social and emotional skills, students will first be presented with what we call their top skills. This is essentially the area, the social and emotional competency domain, where they score the highest on the student self-report. So in the example I've pulled here, the student's strongest area is self-management. So we tell them what that is. We also pull 3 of the most frequently rated items, or the highest rated items from the self-management scale or whatever scale it is, and show them here. So in this case, the student's top 3 skills within self-management are staying focused despite distractions, adapting well to new situations, and setting goals for themselves. These are actual items from the assessment they just took. We also provide a little blurb as to sort of why self-management is important and what it looks like when folks have good self-management skills. Again, trying just to provide a little more information and context for students. Directly under, or actually it's a part of this top skills section, here's where we start providing opportunities for students to engage in those SEL challenges or those student-directed strategies. So we've provided, there's 3 here for self-management, essentially recommended challenges for students to continue to build their self-management skills. Again, with that strength-based perspective, we know that we can always continue building social and emotional skills, and we can also leverage our existing skills to build a sense of confidence and competence for students. And so we do recommend students engage in these challenges to continue building those areas where they may already be really strong in. So they have the opportunity here. They can click the button to view the first challenge, which would open up a way for them to dig a little bit deeper into what that specific challenge is and potentially choose to take it on. A few things I'll just mention here that you'll notice. So you'll see these lock icons here on those 3 challenges related to self-management. This is something that came about from talking with students. They actually were very intrigued and interested in having content that was like quote unquote locked. It made them interested to learn more and kind of see what's coming next. So that's something we added in response to student feedback to make it a little bit more fun and engaging for students. Similarly, you'll see the little note at the bottom here, one student has earned this badge. Essentially, this is going to pull in data from that school or that district setting on how many students have already completed that challenge. The students we talked to really liked that sort of competitive spirit, and it made them really interested to see. I remember one student said like, oh, if hardly any students have done it yet, it makes me want to do it a bit more so I can earn that badge. We also had folks just really like interested and really like it just drove a competitive spirit to engage more. So again, something we added to gamify the system a little bit more to make it fun and engaging for students, with the hope that the goal of it being students continue to engage in these strategies. In addition to the top skills section, when students will scroll down in the student portal, and the next thing they will see is a summary of their student self-report assessment results. Importantly, we do not provide numerical scores for students themselves. We just felt it was too complicated and just could be very confusing. So across these various social and emotional skill areas, we actually provide or we represent scores based on this sort of battery bar graphic that you'll see at the top of each of these cards. And essentially, okay, with this being a strength-based tool, higher scores indicate more strengths. So more shaded bars represent higher scores in those areas. So for example, this student, as you know, their highest scoring area was self-management. Those are 5 shaded bars representing a strength in that area. In contrast that to social awareness or relationship skills, where we're seeing maybe just one bar shaded, meaning those are areas where students have an opportunity for growth. The little eye in a circle icon will explain what those battery bars are. But one thing that I was really interested in seeing when we put this in front of students, every student we talked to just sort of intuitively understood the battery bar. I think the idea is making it analogous to like charging a phone. Students are so used to seeing that charging icon. They just sort of all intuitively got it without even clicking on that button. So again, we're providing scores across these various areas for students to get a sense of where their strengths are and where there are opportunities for growth. Students can click around here. And so if they were to click the Learn More button, what's going to happen is it's going to open up this modal where we're going to provide students with item level information. So just like at the scale or the competency level, we can say where students have strengths, where students have typical scores, or students have opportunities for growth. We do the same thing with the items. So we can specifically tell students the skills that are their strengths. And again, we tell them to keep up the good work because we always can continue to build and leverage our strengths. We tell them the skills that they marked that would be typical, skills they're good at. Again, we also want to continue to work on these. And lastly, skills that are their opportunities for growth, which are skills that can be further developed. So this, we found this to be really helpful for students to make everything even just a bit clearer and more specific in terms of behaviors that are relevant to these competencies that they can continue to build and strengthen. In addition to just exploring the results of their self-assessment, they also have an opportunity to view the challenge or the social and emotional strategy for each of these areas. And so if I were to click on that for optimistic thinking, it will pull up, the first screen that pulls up is just a quick description of the first challenge in that competency. For this one, it's called Even If. It'll talk a little bit about what this challenge is all about. And students can choose to accept that challenge if it's something that they want to do. I'm just going to go back here for a second and say, so we do provide a challenge for each of these skill areas. And the idea here is that we're giving students choice in where they want to focus their attention to build their social and emotional skills. When we talked to students about this, some were really eager to choose that area that they are strongest in. So in this case, self-management. They really, a number of students spoke about wanting to begin where they're already doing well and kind of building where they're already good at, quote unquote, good at is how they said it. And then we had other students that really wanted to start in the areas where they had a growth opportunity. They said, oh, I'm not doing great here. I want to build these skills. And so again, the idea is to give some students some choice and to allow them to choose where they want to focus to provide more. It gets them more engaged and more motivated when there's a bit of choice involved. So that's an introduction to the results of the student self-report, as well as the challenges in the system. The next component in the system is SMART goal setting. And so this is another place where student voice and choice really come into play within the student portal. This part is entirely driven by the student. So they have the opportunity to set goals that are personally relevant to them and meaningful to them in many, many different areas of their lives outside of just of the school or just promoting social and emotional skills. The idea here is we want students to engage more fully in the school setting, which, as we all know, is an important social and emotional skill in and of itself. So students begin by indicating what type of goal they want to set. You can see here lots of different examples. There's academic, healthy habits, extracurricular, hobbies. I've gone ahead and selected college prep as the goal I'm interested in setting for myself. And then once they click that, they're taken to this next screen here, where we ask them to be more specific. And so there's some suggestions here already pre-populated. In this case, my goal is to apply for some scholarships, but they also have an opportunity to write in an other goal if we haven't hit, exactly what it is they want to do. You'll see here, talking about a goal being more specific, the idea is that we're getting students to, or we're prompting students and encouraging them to set SMART goals. So goals that are specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound or within a given time frame. So if I click apply for scholarships, it'll take me to the next screen where we ask them to actually document what their goal is. Again, it pre-populates with it provides a suggestion here. Students can type in their specific goal that they want to set. We ask them to set a deadline for their goal and document the why. Why is it that you actually want to achieve this goal? And then lastly, they're prompted to think about and type in what happens once they achieve the goal. How will they celebrate? Again, celebrating is an important motivator, or thinking about how you're going to celebrate and planning that is an important thing to keep you motivated, particularly on really long-term goals. And so we ask students to document that as well. So once the student has completed inputting their goals, the student portal dashboard will, which is a screenshot I have here, will help them monitor and track their goals. So you can see here, I've got one active goal, applying for 5 college scholarships by middle of October. And but you can also see here if any goals I've already completed, they'll be shown here, or if any goals that maybe I never completed or are incomplete would also show up on this dashboard. I've only taken a very small screenshot of this dashboard, but within this page on their dashboard, they will also see any of the SEL challenges, the strategies that they've selected. They'll also see them there, and it'll give them tasks to complete as they work towards completing those challenges. The last thing I'll note here, I hope walking through the student portal in more depth was helpful in illustrating some different ways that we can pull students in to developing their own social and emotional skills. Before we wrap up here, I also just want to share one thing that there's an important role for educators and adults in supporting students' social and emotional skills as well. And so adults will, in schools and districts, will also have access to students' self-report data within the Aperture system. It will share that data for both individual students as well as aggregate that data at various levels. So for classrooms, for small groups of students, by grade level, by school, by district as well. And it'll do that for both the overall social and emotional composite score, as well as those various social and emotional competency domains. And the system can also disaggregate that data based on various subgroups of students. So gender, race, ethnicity, special education status, all of those different sort of areas that'll help prompt and help you dig deeper into your data to explore results for different subgroups of students. And again, the goal is, the goal of collecting all this data is to better understand students' current skill sets and use that information to drive instruction. So the system also provides to the adults recommendations for strategies and interventions that will benefit students based on their data. And there's a wealth of strategies that are adult-led or adult-directed that can be used to support students, as well as the work that students are already doing for themselves to build their social and emotional skills. And the idea here is, it provides a way, really, we want to provide a way to have opportunities for students and educators also to share information and share their data. Students will have the data and adults will have the data. And the idea is to come together, have great conversations about skills, and ultimately drive instruction to support students in building these important areas of social and emotional skills. Educators and adults in the Aperture system will also see information about those goals that students are setting for themselves. So they'll see how many goals are set, how many goals are achieved, and what those goals look like. And they'll have the same information for the student challenges that students are choosing to engage in themselves. So I just want to now just wrap up really quickly. We've come to the end of this presentation. So I just have a few final thoughts before I turn it back over to Christina to see if there's any questions. So I hope this webinar has been helpful in just sharing lots of different ways we can encourage student voice. And there are lots of ways to actively involve students and get their perspectives and their opinions, and make sure those are incorporated into the programming we're providing for students. Whichever type of student voice activity is being done, though, it's really important that it's intentional, that it's meaningful for students, and that it's authentic. We know from the research that when students are meaningfully involved in their learning, they experience increased motivation, increased engagement in school, an increased sense of agency, as well as increased learning. And schools also see benefits to their programming in terms of programming being a better fit to students' needs and also being more effective for student learning. And then lastly, walking through the DESA student self-report and student portal, these tools can be used to provide schools with a way to meaningfully involve students in developing their own social and emotional skills. And hopefully walking through those tools has been helpful in thinking about ways to incorporate student voice, as well as giving students some choice in their own learning. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Christina. I think we have some time available if there's any questions that might have come in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. Yeah, so one question that we have from Ken is, we're looking to measure student voice and choice across our entire system. What do you recommend as some of the best methods to measure this important aspect at scale?
To measure student voice, is that, I just want to make sure I heard correctly.
Yeah, so we are looking to measure student voice and choice across our entire system. What do you recommend as some of the best methods to measure this important aspect at scale?
That's a really great question. And please correct me if I'm misinterpreting what you're asking, Ken. I am not familiar with any specific tools that measure actual student voice. And I'm interpreting that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm interpreting that to mean like various ways that students might be, feedback from students might be solicited. I'm not sure of like one sort of tool that kind of spans all that, but please respond in the Q&A if I'm missing what you mean by that question, so we can get a good answer for you. Christina, you're on mute.
Thanks, Jen. Ken also asked, other than through an SEL-based instructional path, are there other pathways through traditional core content instruction that can help support student voice and choice?
Can you repeat that one more time for me?
Yeah, so other than through an SEL-based instructional path, are there other pathways through traditional core content instruction that can help support student voice and choice?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Christina. Absolutely. Uh, there's lots of ways. So one of the things that often is happening in the classroom level is, it sounds so simple, but teachers asking for student feedback following a unit or a unit of lessons where they can collect information directly from students on what's working, what's not working, how they might, how things might change for the next unit. That's just one really easy way for schools to collect quick information for students, but that has a direct impact on the academic instruction that's being delivered in classrooms.
Thank you for that one. And Susie asked, is there a way we can access the full assessment to see all the questions that the students will see?
Absolutely. Can email me. There's get in touch with us after. My email's on the screen. I'm happy to share. And there'll be an email coming out from the team after this webinar, and with contact information as well. So yeah, absolutely, we can share those items to get a full look at the assessment.
Yeah, and also in the chat, Ken went ahead and elaborated. He said, as a part of our district strategic plan, we're trying to help our secondary school students feel more involved in the instruction they are receiving.
That's helpful. Thank you. I think I need to think on this a little more, and perhaps we can follow up after the meeting and talk a bit more about that, because I think it's a great question.
Great, thank you. And then another one from Ken. So it almost seems like this webinar is using the terms SEL and student voice and choice interchangeably. Could we discuss more about how instructional programming, not necessarily just with explicit SEL instruction, can better interact with student voice and choice?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope I did not imply that the two are interchangeable. They're not. They're very different. The focus here today was really around incorporating student voice into social and emotional learning programming. Student voice is important in all areas of school settings, from academics to school policies to any kind of school improvement effort. And it's important to capture student voice related to all of those various areas. That's a whole nother webinar in and of itself, but we really today just wanted to focus in on how it relates to social and emotional competence, developing social and emotional competence.
Thank you, Jen. And another question is, do you tend to see differences between how students rate themselves and how they're rated by their teachers?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So it is very common, and it's generally known that there are differences between different rater types, whether that's students rating themselves, teachers rating students, or even parents rating their own children. We tend to see general differences in those various groups. And the reason for that really is because of the sort of scope or frame of reference for which ratings are being completed. So a teacher is going to be reflecting on specific observable behaviors they're seeing in the classroom. So for a high school student, that might be like one teacher, one rating, one class period, like science or social studies or English. Whereas a student is going to be thinking about all areas of their life, both in school and out of school. And it doesn't mean that one rating is better than the other, or one rating is more accurate. Really, the idea is that we get more information from these various, like by pulling all of these various perspectives together. And we can get a better understanding of students across various areas that they're being observed or they're rating themselves. We want to gain that information to have a rich understanding of students to better support their social and emotional skills. So yeah, we do tend to see a bit of a difference in ratings with between how teachers versus students rate themselves.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you, Jen, for sharing your expertise with us, and thank you, attendees, for joining us today. If you have any additional questions, feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and we can go ahead and email you back with those answers. By the way, we will be sending you a follow-up email with a recording of the presentation and the resources within 24 hours. And just wanted to thank you all for that, everything you do, and for the education system. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, everyone.